Hey guys, tonight I want to talk about whether or not a Dengfu e10 is still the best, cheapest way into an introductory level electric mountain bike. Up until this point, I've always felt like that an E10 was an excellent way to go. You get a really quality bike for a really cheap price. But with the prices coming down on bikes the way they have, I've really begun to challenge whether or not the Dengfu E10 is the cheapest, best way to get into electric mountain biking. So, what I want to explore with you is what another option and compare it against the Dengfu E10 and really try to answer the question, is the Dengfu E10 the best way to go for an intro into electric mountain biking? So, let's get to it. Like I said, what I want to do here is compare a Dengfu E10 to a Cannondale Moterra Neo 4 and basically figure out if you were going to purchase your first electric mountain bike today, and that would be sort of an intro to electric mountain biking, which would be the best way to go? A Dengfu E10 or a Cannondale Moterra Neo 4? And that's what I'm going to try to address in this video. So first of all, these are the areas that I thought were important to compare. And I did this comparison on December 8th, 2023. And, based on the research that I had, the all-in price for the Dengfu E10 would be $4,000. And by the way, if you want to see more details on that, I have a separate video that's linked in the description. And I'm comparing that to a Cannondale Moterra Neo 4, which I am seeing as of December the 18th, I could buy and have at my house for about $4,300. So that's the comparison. And I'm comparing them against 6 categories. And after those 6 categories, I'll come to my conclusion. But to give you just an overview, in the basic geometry, when I look at the basic geometry, I think those two bikes are fairly even. And when I look at the basic specs on the bike, and I mean the bare bones specs, it's a draw. But when I look at the motor, battery, warranty, I'd have to say the Neo has a little bit of a heads up there. When I look at the big components, the shocks, the fork, those kinds of things, I'm saying that the E10 probably would win in that category. When I'm looking at the wheels, I would say that the wheels clearly, the E10 has a better set of wheels. And for the dropper and the drivetrain, I'd say the Neo has a better set. So I think this is a discussion worth having. I don't think it's totally clear, although I will come to a final conclusion. But going into the basic geometry, when you look at this, the Dengfu and the Moterra, the Dengfu has a little bit larger stack number. It has a little bit longer reach number, and it has a longer chainstay. And I think generally people would consider the higher those values within reason would be better. And as a result, I'd say that those numbers generally would favor the E10. But the wheelbase, head tube angle, and seat angle, based on trying to get, a relatively slack, e-mountain bike that's going to perform pretty well in a downhill situation and pretty well in a trail situation, I'd say those numbers favor the Neo. So it's kind of a 3 for one and 3 for the other in the basic geometry. When you're looking at the specs of the bike, I think it's a draw. I mean, both of the bikes, the eye to eye and the stroke on the shock, they're both 210 by 55, which is, great place to be. Tons of shocks available. The rear travel on both bikes is 150. That's great. That's sort of a light enduro, heavy trail, great. Both of them have the same. Both of them are 29er bikes, so that's a draw. The max fork length on both of the bikes is pretty close. It'll allow you to put, a 160 fork on either bike, I think, no problem. So the basic bike specs between the two bikes is a draw, I would say. Now, in the motor, battery, and warranty, it becomes a lot more interesting because here the Dengfu e10 has the Bafang 510 motor, and the Neo has the EP8. And there are positives and minuses for both of these motors. We'll go into a little bit of that down below, but basically, I think it's a draw. I think the Bafang is probably a stronger motor, but the Shimano EP8 is more well known and is a little bit more refined feeling. So probably a draw in the motors, not because they are the same, but they both have positives and minuses that kind of offset each other to get you to a draw. In the torque, though, it's clear that the Bafang motor has more torque than the Neo, and as a result, I'd say that's an advantage for the E10. On the battery, the Dengfu E10 has an 840 watt-hour battery, and the Neo has a 630. So that advantage, I think, goes to the E10, assuming that you want a bigger battery. Motor service and parts. You can get some parts for the Dengfu E10, and you do see on message boards and on YouTube videos people working on that motor and claiming to work on it successfully. So clearly there's some ability to get parts and service that motor. But with the Shimano EP8, finding spare parts and finding someone who's comfortable servicing that motor is pretty hard to do. So I would say it's almost none in that category. So I think that strongly favors the E10. In the warranty, though, the E10 has practically no warranty. I mean, the thing comes from China. I mean, if you have a problem, I'm not even sure who you get back to. Whereas the Neo has a full Cannondale warranty, a major bicycle brand in the United States, very well known, many dealers throughout the country. So I'd say the warranty, pretty heavily favors the Neo. On the assembly, the Dengfu E10 basically comes disassembled in a box, and you put it together from the ground up. So that's a pretty heavy do-it-yourself build situation. However, the Neo, to my knowledge, would come fully assembled. You just drive down to your dealer and pick it up, and there'd be no DIY involved with the Neo. So I'd say the assembly pretty much favors the Neo. Going into the big components, once again, in the fork area, the $4,000 E10 was spec'd with a Yari fork, and the Neo has a RockShox 35 silver. I would prefer the RockShox Yari, and I think most people would. On the shock, the E10, I spec that with a DVO Topaz in the 4000 build. The Neo comes with a Select R. I think the Topaz is a vastly superior shock to the Select R, so I would say it's a pretty significant advantage to the E10. On the brakes, the E10 has the Magura Trail Sports, and the Neo has the TRP Slate. I'd say that's a draw. And both of them have 200 millimeter rotors front and back, and I'd say that's a draw. On the wheels, they both come with pretty low budget hubs, so that's probably a draw. But on the rims, the E10 is spec'd with HTZ e-bike specific rims, which are quite strong, and they're I-30, meaning they're 30 millimeters diameter inside those rims, much better rims than the WTB STX I-25 that comes on the Neo. So I would say the advantage is pretty heavily in the E10 for the rims. Same thing with the tires. The Michelin E-Wilds for this kind of bike, I think, are a much better tire than the Recon, so I'd give the advantage to the E10. And for rim detection, in the 4000 buildup of the E10, it assumed it would have Tannis armor, and there's no rim protection on the Neo, so there's a pretty heavy advantage to the E10. With regard to the dropper and the drivetrain, I think the droppers are even on the two bikes. The E10 is spec'd with a much better dropper lever. The cranks are a draw. I think the E10 only has 170 because I preferred them, but most people prefer the 165, and it could have been spec'd with the 165. The chainring, shifter, and cassette. There's nothing wrong with the E10's setup. However, the Neo comes with a more traditional setup, and as a result, and the setup on the Neo 4 is a more expensive setup. So I'd say the advantage here would go to the Neo for the drivetrain components. So why would you get one over the other with all of that information? And sort of to pull it all together, I think the things that favor the E10, you have the potential that the motor will be able to be serviced much more often and in much more detail than the Shimano motor. So that's an advantage. The E10 clearly has better big components, the fork, shock, and brakes, I think would favor the E10. And in the E10, you would have much more control over the build process in terms of what you put in it or don't put in it or how you build it. However, favoring the Neo, you're dealing with Cannondale, a well-known company. I think that's a big advantage. Number two, a huge advantage is you have a much better warranty and a much better way to reclaim the warranty with the Neo. There's also number three, there's much less DIY with it. So if you want to get the bike and not have to mess with building it up yourself, the Neo it favors the Neo. And number four, there's virtually no wait time to get a functioning bike. I mean, I think if I ordered a Neo today within 5 business days, I'd probably have the bike and be ready to start riding it. So overall, when I look at this and ask the question, which would be a better intro level e-bike, I think the scales have tilted in favor of the Neo just for the reasons I've mentioned above. I think the E10 is still a solid option, and if you want to build out your own bike and have a lot of discretion and enjoy the build process, by all means go for the E10. But with the if you're getting your first e-mountain bike and you got the warranty and got the backing of a Cannondale, probably a better way to go would be to get the Neo. So anyway, I hope you've given you guys something to think about, and I'll see y'all at the top.